Hello. This episode is going to be another solo, curious, short episode where I explore something that's been on my mind recently. I'm going to do a separate episode about person centered counseling and the kind of core foundations of the therapy that I practice because often when I start with a new client, I explore their awareness of therapy, their experience of therapy up until that point, their thoughts on person centered counseling, and if they know the kind of branches of therapy and the different types that are available, but also acknowledging that even if we know the different types of therapy, we don't necessarily know how each therapist practices because there's branches to that. Even in person-centered counseling, you'll not have a similar experience with each therapist because they bring themselves to it and their lens to what they experience person-centered counseling to be. But that's an aside. Today, I just wanted to touch a wee bit on the impacts of therapy and how it can, yeah, potentially improve your life and some of the common benefits, but also maybe some of the things that aren't really spoken about too much. So we know that therapy can improve your relationship with yourself. And with that, the kind of episode that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, the solo episode I released about loneliness, I shared in there that your relationship with yourself, getting to know yourself more fully, although that can ebb and flow, then reduces your experience of loneliness because you know who you are more fully. And you've began to unpack and let go of some of those layers that potentially society and all the things have put on you. And so that can be a benefit of therapy, that it gives you the space and the time to get to know yourself more fully. It can be a sounding board, a compassionate, kind sounding board a therapist can be for you to get to know yourself more fully. It can also improve your communication with yourself and with others. So all of these kind of things that kind of focus on yourself, I believe ripples out, and a lot of therapists believe this, ripples out into other aspects of your life. Like a glowing, if we want to think about color here, any color that feels warm and fuzzy for you and positive and joyful. And for me right now, I'm thinking of a yellowy kind of warm glow. So imagine that happens in the therapy space with you and a therapist. You're experiencing that together as you're unraveling your life experiences, your feelings, your thoughts. You're beginning to exchange that and feel less alone with your feelings, but also all the things that come with that. And then that glow can stay with you as an individual, and then it can also ripple into relationships. And this can happen over a longer period of time where trust and safety is built between you and your therapist. Yeah, I'm being a wee bit vague because I'm going to explore what person-centered counseling is and the relational component of that. But I think it is important to touch on here that I believe in the importance of the relationship within therapy. A lot of therapists do believe this. I'm saying I believe, like it is a definite common belief that no matter the type of therapist, in terms of their training and their modality, what type of therapy they practice, the relationship between them and the client is deeply, deeply important. That means that you feel safe, you feel understood, you feel at ease, you don't feel judged, and all the things that come with that kind of nurturing, reassuring relationship is the kind of, for if it's cringy but it's true, the fertile soil for a nourishing therapeutic relationship to grow. That foundation is the relationship, and all the other things that are deeply important too are aspects of that, but the kind of foundation is the relationship, and then there's kind of building blocks upon that. And if we think about this in the opposite way, if you don't have a safe and nurturing relationship, your full nervous system can't feel at ease to then begin to unpack your previous experiences. That's not to say that that's a sole purpose or reason, for your nervous system, for example, to feel safe. That can be a gentle process that can't be rushed and is unique to each of us as individuals. But I think it is a big part of the type of therapy that I practice, is having a safe, nurturing relationship as the foundation. And then creating space. So coming back to this title of this podcast is creating space within us. And so I imagine it similar to like clearing out a room or clearing out a drawer that you've been thinking about clearing out for ages. You clear it out, you make room for new. You make room for new experiences, you make room for potentially old experiences to come back, but you're creating space in your mind, similar to clearing the cookies on your computer or shutting down the tabs. A lot of the time we don't realize that our mind is often exploring and processing things, and it's looking for opportunities to do that. And so if we are not giving it the opportunity to do that, it's creating it's using energy. It's doing its job to process things, and maybe we're not giving it the room, so it's processing in other ways. And that can just be simply it's running up energy in the background. Similar to when you've got lots of apps open on your phone. And so if you have the space and the time to explore some of that in therapy or journaling or talking to someone that you feel safe and at ease with, then you begin to create more space for fun, joy, and ease. And the reason I wanted to do this podcast and just highlight it in a kind of short form way is that we don't often hear about that. We hear about the purpose of therapy being a space. Well, it's a complex answer to that, but a space for you to process your feelings and emotions. And the side effect is so many side effects for different individuals, but one of them being that we can create more space for joy and ease. And to feel comfortable and at ease and safe in the present moment to enjoy those experiences around you. Sometimes when we're in the process of processing our feelings and emotions still, like I just shared, that our mind is still busy working out what happened or what our experience was of something. Even if we're in the moment of experiencing something fun or joyful, like we would categorize as, we're not fully there. You know, some of our mind is taken up thinking about it, thinking about something else, or thinking about what we have to do. You know, that idea that we're either in the future or in the past or somewhere in between. And that's not to say we're always going to be present and in the moment and kind of working it all out. But I think it is a really nice thing to think about that we can create more space in our mind to enjoy the moment or create more things that we can enjoy. And sometimes I think this leads me on to another conversation, but I just want to quickly touch on our relationship with our body and our relationship with food. I've kind of touched on this. So if you've listened to my past podcasts, you might be familiar with me talking about this. But I feel a deep passion for touching on the injustice of having our focus being taken up by our relationship with our body and food. That's not me diminishing that it's important to have a comfortable kind of, if not comfortable, neutral relationship with your body and your relationship with food. But I do think that the way that systems are set up in society, diet culture, wellness culture, all that type of stuff, teaches us to be overly focused on making our body smaller and overly focused on what we're nurturing our bodies with. And there's a fine balance to be had within all of that. But for me, the injustice comes from the amount of energy it can take up and the distraction it can take and just the kind of attention it takes away from pursuing the things that we enjoy and find joy in and can find joy in. So similarly in that, when we begin to process our past and like I said at the very beginning, work out who we fully are, and although that's a lifelong thing, when we begin to do that, we create more space for the joy. And that's not to say that there is not going to be that yin and yang and seasonal experience of your life where there's ebbs and flows in how you feel and what you're experiencing. Yeah, I just think that it does create more space and room in your life for joy. What happens when you lose part of the episode? I've been kind of swaying. Do I record a wee bit extra on this episode or do I just leave it? And yeah, so I lost some of the recording and I've decided to continue because I think I lost only about 10 minutes, but within that, there was some really important to me points that I wanted to share. So just adding on from what I shared in the first half of this episode, that therapy can meet us where we're at and create space for so many different things in our life. And a couple of points that I really wanted to highlight that I maybe didn't mention is that therapy can affirm who we are and celebrate who we are. that it's not always about shifting and changing and growing. It can be integrating parts of ourselves and celebrating parts of ourselves in a safe, relaxed, understanding, and a kind of non-judgmental space. It offers us a space to explore who we truly are, and also offers us a space to celebrate who we are and affirm that and not try and shift it and change it and or judge it. And that's not to say that we want to maybe always do that, that there might be times in our lives where we want to challenge parts of ourselves. But I do think an important thing to highlight is that it can really celebrate those parts of us that maybe we hide or we don't allow to come out in different settings because we maybe don't feel safe and comfortable and ease. We've maybe not integrated and accepted those parts of ourselves by ourselves. So therapy can offer us that space to bounce off I always describe my role as a kind of sounding board, a safe sounding board for anyone, for clients to bounce ideas off of and make connections in their own life. It's like a compassionate sounding board for you to begin to make connections and unravel things that you want to unravel. And alongside that, like I mentioned, it creates space for other things. So I wanted to highlight in that it can create space for you to go back to old hobbies and things that you maybe let go of when you were younger. There's something about in that clearing of space that allows for our kind of freedom or childlike self to come out. And this can be for lots of different reasons. It potentially could be for someone that they never had a chance to fully experience childhood. They maybe grew up in a household where they had to grow up quickly. They had a lot of responsibilities as a child. That concept of the parentified child. They maybe didn't get the opportunities to fully lean into their childlike self and be free and fun and curious and carefree. And so that creating space can allow us to lean back into maybe the things that we used to do or the things that we kind of thought we wanted to do but never got a chance to, or completely oppositely, things that we want to try as adults that we didn't even connect to as children. But there's something about that childlike energy that I want to communicate, that kind of curiosity and passion that can return as we've processed things, similarly to the way that we hear mindfulness and meditation described. It kind of sets the tone for our day if we have that in our daily routine journaling. These things that allow us to process and let go creates more room in our mind for other things. And so I wanted to mention that idea of hobbies returning and or making space for new hobbies. And a couple of other things I wanted to end on, that there is this concept in person-centered counseling of congruence and incongruence, and how to fully describe that would take a long time. And I'll do that in the other person-centered counseling episode. But in a kind of overview, congruence means our true, authentic, genuine self. And all the colors of that, because that varies depending, we're multifaceted beings that have had lots of different experiences with different people, and maybe different parts of us come out with different people. I often think that we store different energies of ourselves in others because someone else's energy brings out a different energy in us. So who we are in one relationship might be slightly different in the next, because not because we're changing parts of ourselves, although that can be the case, that we chameleonize ourselves to fit in. But the other side of that is that different people bring out different energies, and there's a kind of only you'll know what the difference is between camouflaging parts of yourself to fit in, to feel a kind of sense of belonging, but that would be incongruent. I'll come back to what that means in a sec. But then there's another element of being different parts of yourself because different people bring out different things in you. And that can be really congruent because it's a multifaceted thing that we have as human beings that just shifts and changes with us, with the people that we're with. So incongruence is that when there's a kind of a separation between our real self, who we are in the world, and our ideal self, who we want to be. And maybe if you're listening and you've done therapy training, and probably lots of different modalities bring this up, the Johari window. And I had forgotten about that modular process for a while, but I recently talked about it with a client and I thought it'd be interesting to share a wee bit about that here. Because the window, imagine a window, a clean window that you can see right through, that kind of clarity that that gives you to see, right? That that Johari's window is a model of how we understand ourselves and what is known to the world and what is known to us. So I'll quickly describe it. Imagine those 4 panel windows that you used to get, maybe still do get in kind of old school houses. Each quadrant of the window represents a different thing in terms of understanding us and our self-awareness and self-understanding and what's known to us and other people. So one part of the window describes what is known to us and what is known to other people. So, for example, something about me, I'm a counselor. That's maybe not as detailed as I could be, but I'm just going to share that because it's on the top of my mind. I know that and other people know that. Just a simple thing about me. And then another quadrant would be something that I'm aware of that you're not aware of, and other people in my life aren't aware of. Something that maybe I decide I want to keep to myself, not for any reason, but actually I just want to kind of keep that as information for me, or something I feel shameful about or guilty about, or something I'm not fully ready to share. That would be one of these kind of, it's clear to me, I have clarity in the window through the window, but other people don't. So it's a bit frosty for others. And then another quadrant, so we'll think about the lower right, would be things that other people are aware of about me that I'm not aware of myself. So they're conscious of different parts of me, maybe my mannerisms or just something I do when I'm feeling upset or happy, something that I'm not fully aware of, but they can see fully. And you might be able to notice this if you think about someone in your life who is maybe working on discovering parts of themselves. Or maybe not even that. Maybe you're just kind of caught up in, you're aware of parts of them that they can't see themselves, is really what I'm sharing there. That maybe you're things that you love about them that they don't fully know, things that you maybe feel annoyed by that they don't know, the impact that they have on you, or just who they are, just if elements of who they are that they're maybe not fully aware of yet. But you can see crystal clear through that window analogy. And then the last one is things that you don't know and others don't know. So something that's so deep in your unconscious that it's not been brought to the surface at all yet for you or for someone else. And so that model is kind of used to work out what parts of us we're working through and understanding more of and developing self-awareness, and things can shift and change from that sense of unknown to known, and that process can happen through therapy. And I've witnessed it within myself and with clients. And the shift can often be from incongruence to congruence too, because parts of us, when we begin to live more fully as ourselves in different situations, parts of our potential anxiety and worry and disconnect and often loneliness, like I mentioned last solo episode, can begin to dissipate. Loneliness can begin to dissipate the more we get to know ourselves. And similarly, the more we allow others to see our full self, and that kind of that shift and change within us. And although this podcast is a wee bit all over the place, I think it's really valuable to explore all of the impacts that therapy can have and the importance of a solid relationship. I think I'll end by sharing that I mentioned the importance of relationships, and I kind of just touched on the importance of having someone that celebrates you and understands you. And there is a balance right now to be had with the impact of lived experience and how that can impact therapy and someone's understanding of you. And I think that it's a mixture of all things, that actually lived experience can be really, really impactful and deeply connecting for someone to know that you've been through a similar situation, or you really get their experience based on something you've experienced. But at the same time, I deeply believe in the impact of learning and wisdom and knowledge in the therapy space, and also going through your own journey. I think that that's been one of the biggest impacts for me as a therapist, is going through my own therapeutic process and continue to, but really going to the depths of my being and figuring out things that are uncomfortable, joyful, shameful, all the things. And coming back to the very title of this podcast, creating more space in my life for joy and connection, and going back to things that I used to enjoy, creating new space for new things. And you notice that the more you create room in your mind, the more things that maybe don't serve you, don't honor you, don't allow you to live free, they begin to fall away. And the things that maybe served you for a time don't begin to do the same that they used to. Distractions, coping mechanisms, even people you maybe listen to, you got what you needed from that connection, that relationship, whatever it is. Um, it doesn't kind of dismiss the impact it's had on you, the benefits, but they begin to fall away, and more room begins to grow for those things that really serve you in this chapter in your life. So a wee bit of a all over the place podcast. I think that I'm never going to be able to capture the energy I did in the episode I lost, but I still wanted to share a wee bit more there and highlight some of those things that I didn't end up talking about. So if you managed to get this far, thank you so much for listening. I really love doing these kind of check-in episodes where I'm exploring some of the things that I talk about frequently, but also working out how I feel in the moment about things. I think that that's the gift of talking like this, kind of you enter a bit of creative flow. So it isn't structured. I maybe have a couple of themes that I want to touch on, but then I allow myself just to kind of, yeah, go through the process and trust that whatever needs to come out comes. And yeah, I really think it's a good time to think about joy in spring. Spring feels like a real transition from the kind of cold, dark, currying in to planting seeds